everybody, can you guys hear me okay? Over the music? Charlie is not in the basement yet. We tested everything. And the time was correct. I do hope that we don't have a time snafu. So we're going to listen to a little bit more music. He's not in. He should be. Getting nervous here. If not, I'm going to tell you guys stories from my childhood for an hour. I hope that might be fun. Okay, another tune because Charlie's not in, and I am pinging him on the various media possibilities that I have. As it sometimes goes, we're testing things, and everything works fine in the sound check, and then we arrange the time, and then sometimes things happen, traffic jam, or I don't know. A child may have lost a tooth. Mr. Charlie Fink of Forbes magazine and the writer of Charlie Fink's Metaverse, an AR-enabled guide to AR. Now, if I was going to buy a book... Oh, there's people watching that don't know who Charlie is. I always recommend when I'm watching reading the description of the announcement. I take great care in announcing what we're doing in various ways, and I can actually hear footsteps. And here he is.
I'm standing here, baby.
He's here. He's right here. So we're gonna fade over. Wait, we're listening to some really wonderful music that I wrote a while ago for a teeny comedy, tragic comedy. Hold on. And here he is. I'm fading down the music. It is so sad. This music. It was so sad. All right. Let me do my intro spiel. Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour without Joe Yardley, because we know that Joe Yardley cannot be in the basement due to bandwidth issues. Today on the show is Charlie Fink. He writes, among many other publications that he has written for Forbes magazine currently. We're going to ask him for a specific title. He writes about AR and VR, and he's also the author of, as I said earlier, a book called the Metaverse, and an AR-enabled guide to AR and VR. Hello, Charlie, and welcome to the basement.
Hey, Drax. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Your avatar looks cool, and I say this every time. I mean, there are people here who said, well, I just took something sort of off the shelf. I didn't have time, or I didn't have Sansar dollars yet and all. But I've seen you in real life, and, your picture is all over the place. There's plenty of footage. For some reason, this avatar carries something of your personality, don't you think?
I was too cheap to buy a beard, but I did get the avatar to be bald. So.
See, that's dedication. I have a bunch of books here, as people know. I have Richard Bartle's book, and we didn't get. I'm so knee deep in editing that we didn't get around to getting your book. So let's just get Richard Bartle's book out of here, and this book here, Space Opera, we need to get rid of this. It has nothing to do with the show. Your book is And we're going to talk about many things, but I want to start with the book because the book is called The Metaverse: An AR-Enabled Guide to AR VR. And I haven't read the book, but I saw the promo video and there's little AR things popping out. So,
Yeah.
and I saw your presentation that we're going to link on the blog, your slideshow uh, that has to do with the book. And so let me ask you first, why do you hate VR so much, and why do you love AR? Uh,
Well, I happen to love VR, and VR is what turned me into a computer professional in the early '90s.
Mhm,
So I don't hate VR. I am disappointed with the way that it's developing, and we can talk about that.
mhm.
It has not hit an inflection point, and I have come to fear the reason is not because, as we have been saying the past couple of years, because of price or because of plug and play or because of wireless. The
Mhm.
reason may be deeper and more complex than that. It may be the lack of a compelling consumer value proposition
Mhm.
beyond playing games and some form of visual social media, if you will, which we also have in Second Life, as you and many of your listeners must know.
That's right. And
So
you know,
I don't hate
obviously,
VR. I just want VR to be great right now. I'm an impatient man. I'm 58 years old. I can't wait 10 years.
mhm.
With regard to AR, everybody has a smartphone in their pocket, and most smartphones are capable of AR in some form, and it's about to get, and it is continually getting, a lot better, a lot more useful, a lot more compelling, and it's going to be, and it already is, I should say, integrated into apps like Snapchat and Facebook, which we use every day. And that is only going to increase in scale and functionality. Augmented reality is kind of a funny inside baseball, if you would, word that we all know, but that regular consumers do not know.
Right. Maybe actually
And it is a word
maybe
I think in 10 years or 5 years is
mm,
going to sound a lot like saying the World Wide Web,
right.
right?
You
When
know what?
somebody says that, they sound like somebody's mom.
Maybe we want to parse that out real quick. What these all these R's are. But thank you for starting us off right away. And of course, I was a little provocative with
Well, you
why do
asked a
you
very, yeah, exactly. You asked a
uh,
very provocative question.
and you nailed it on the head because we actually had this discussion yesterday around this whole discussion about numbers that are um, there was oops sorry I gotta yeah, so we're talking about value proposition and I'm trying to put myself into VR from desktop. Um, the numbers that of social VR, we are here in social VR, which is Sansar. There's a bunch of other, there's high fidelity, of course, and then there's a bunch that are not so well known. And exactly yesterday we were talking about, why are the numbers not higher? And again, for me personally, I have this privilege of being sort of a quirky, I don't know who I am, an artist or whatever. I'm not, my livelihood doesn't depend on numbers. When a company in Silicon Valley, they're under enormous pressure to get those numbers up. And you mentioned there is the value proposition. What do I need it for? And this does remind me of Second Life. Now, I find Second Life incredibly useful. I'm just finishing this documentary about disability in virtual worlds, but now I have so many questions. Maybe we should delineate all these MRs, and then we'll go into. I'm going to ask you go a little bit deeper about this value proposition because I would say there is value. Maybe it's just not communicated well. What are all the R's? So there's AR, there's VR, there's MR, there's XR. Can you briefly
Well,
give the
yeah,
consumer an
I don't know
overview?
whether I can do it briefly, but let me do it the way I do it in my presentation and in the book. Okay, for once upon a time, there was something called the Milgram scale. Milgram was an academic. He actually was working with a guy named Kashino. And in the early 90s, they were trying to figure out the relationship of virtual reality, which is a completely occluded world,
Hmm.
or augmented reality, which is a digitally enhanced world, which at that time was represented primarily through heads-up displays, although has become, as we all know, very varied and sophisticated. And so they posited there was a continuum from physical reality all the way to fully occluded digital reality. And along the line was augmented and then mixed reality. Mm-hmm. And they defined augmented reality as reality that just has information laid on top of it, like a heads-up display, or mixed reality in which the person in the physical world could affect a virtual object inside of the virtual world, right? So imagine that there was an augmented reality basketball game and that you could throw the basketball with your hand.
Yeah, I saw that Project Neuron at the SVVR a couple of years ago. Just real quick, they had several objects that were tracked in a defined space. You had an Oculus on, and you were able to actually take a basketball and other objects like a brick, and in the virtual object was visible through your headset,
right.
but you had
mixed
that
reality
feeling.
Mixed reality also refers to that kind of texture mapping where you're inside of VR, but they texture map a stick and it feels like a torch, right? Or you reach out and touch a railing and there's a real railing there.
Right. There's
so,
the Void theme park in Utah.
So that's also called mixed reality. The Void calls it hyper reality. And then along came Microsoft and they said, oh, wow, the Milgram scale is really cool. Let's borrow it. And instead, let's call it the Microsoft Mixed Reality Continuum.
Ooh.
And here on the physical reality side, as it starts to become augmented and mixed, we happen to have a product called the HoloLens. And oh, look at this fully occluded all the way over here on the right side. What do you know? We have a fully occluded headset called Windows Mixed Reality headset. So as it happens, there's this spectrum, and Microsoft has products that sit all along the spectrum. And of course, when I first heard this, I thought, oh, well, this is brilliant. But then the more I started talking about it and the more I started thinking about it, the more it became apparent to me that it's total nonsense, that it's bunk. It's marketing bullshit that Microsoft has perpetrated to steal the language and own the space. And by the way, holograms are defined as 3D objects that you see with the unaided naked eye. Look it up. Microsoft has called the HoloLens a holographic computing platform, thereby appropriating the word hologram and completely misapplying it to a consumer product. So and they've also sort of taken mixed reality and bastardized the definition of that. So basically all of augmented reality is captured by mixed reality, and there's this new word called XR or X reality that refers to all the R's taken together, which 2 years ago, XR referred to bioreality, and it has been understood that way in academic circles for almost 30 years. But somehow Qualcomm and Microsoft got together and they appropriated that word, and I've waged a one-man campaign against that word, but apparently I have lost.
Capitalism is a wonderful thing with all this appropriation and stuff.
If you go into my book, I almost never use the word MR, and I don't use the word XR, although some of the other authors like Stephanie Lamas does. In fact, she writes the first chapter, and then the second chapter I debunk a lot of what she says. Here is the issue, okay? VR and AR both potentially will use head-mounted displays, and they are computing platforms, wearable computing platforms, and like all computers, they do a lot of different things. But VR has its origins in campfires and cave paintings and Plato's cave and the Baroque churches that immersed you in holy and clean and religious things, and dark rides and haunted houses and television and movies and now virtual reality. And these are all things for which we employ our willing suspension of disbelief. And we allow them to immerse us and allow us access to this fantasy world, this world that we can't otherwise see. And so it is very much tied to spirituality and religion.
Right.
Now let's talk about augmented reality. Augmented reality is none of those things. Augmented reality is a club. It is a tool. It is something that man will use to make himself better. It's like having, your smartphone in your hands and you've got 24/7 always on access to Google, right? Which makes you a smarter person. I never have a senior moment when I've got Google in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what was the name of that movie? I know. Google is in my hands. It is a tool. And wouldn't it be great if I could just wave and have Google show me what I'm looking for without me having to use my hands and look away from the physical world? So augmented reality is a club. It is a tool that makes man better, that makes man smarter. It will make us it will help educate us. It will do so many different things. But the one thing it will not do is eliminate reality. Because once you include augmented reality so much that it's virtual reality, I mean, where is the use case for that? It doesn't make any sense.
Hold on.
Reality is the key word in augmented reality. Yes.
Charlie, this is really awesome. I was just going to interject here, and I know that you didn't you made a wonderful case, a wonderful distinction, and I completely agree. And also, you didn't judge those vis-a-vis their value, although you did say, and that's where I want to push back real quick. AR is going to make us better because it has sort of a use case. It has an efficiency aspect to it that makes us more productive, and VR through its occlusive aspect that we are willing to go into this other world. There is no value. I'm putting little
No,
words
no,
in your
let
mouth.
me, let me,
But let me just say one thing. I would say, and I know you're not saying that, but I hear what you're saying in a much more judgmental version all the time, and I would say going into a cave and paint can make me a really good person. If I immerse myself into a quote unquote fantasy world with or without other people, it may actually bring me, just like meditation could, to I don't know, more inner peace, and then sort of that reflects
Right.
outward.
Well, let me make this distinction for a second.
Hmm.
Virtual reality is extremely useful to enterprise and medicine
Hmm.
and other fields today. So it's not like VR has no use. It has a tremendous number of uses. The entertainment and consumer use may not be where I'd like it to be today, but its uses in medicine, its uses in design. I mean, they used to design cars and make giant life-size clay models. They don't need to do that anymore.
Hmm.
They make these beautiful high-res 3D designs, which they, employ VR and AR to examine and experiment and evaluate. So, VR is helping surgeons do surgical planning. It's being used for surgeons to train. It's being used to help treat PTSD and other phobias. There's a great program that Skip Rizzo of USC has been working on with the Department of Defense to, help treat soldiers who are suffering from, or veterans suffering from PTSD by using a kind of regression therapy enabled by a very realistic VR program that combines, talk therapy with regression and visualization, and it's amazing. Mm-hmm. So VR is doing a lot of amazing things and is going to be very fundamental to a lot of enterprises, and certainly we know its ability to do, flight sim and other kinds of simulation where it's extremely difficult to do that kind of training in the real world. Right. So VR has a lot of uses even today that are quite extraordinary and transformative and disruptive. So I'm not dismissing it in any way.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying
only an entertainment medium.
Right. I'm just saying that my audience is probably now by the hardcore listeners are probably going like, wow, 17 minutes into the show and Drax has not told his guests that for him sort of the leisurely exploration into the minds of others through artistic expression while not having a sort of definable ROI right now may actually be in the long run really, really super important sort of for personal growth, and then and then hippie kumbaya will contribute to a better world.
Well, listen, all you need to do is go to some place like the Tribeca Film Festival and
Hmm.
see what artists are doing with VR today.
Right.
And that's an indication of where it will go in the future. And there is free roam VR, which you can only do in public places, and
Hmm.
right now is limited to mostly shooters. But it allows you to truly be fully immersed in a virtual world, to walk around, to have freedom, agency, interaction with other people and avatars, some of which are represent humans and some of which represent AI, characters powered by simple AI.
Hmm.
So there is the holy grail is out there, and it's seeable and knowable and touchable.
Hmm.
But when that will be in the home for consumers is, would take it will take a while, I
Now,
think.
I, I want to tell you a very quick anecdote and to get your take on it because a couple days ago we had the film that I'm working on is coming out next week. Was shown at the U.S. Congress. There was a briefing about disability in a virtual world. So we're about 200 people in that briefing room, I was told, and we assembled here in 114 Harvest in the basement because the two researchers, Tom Burles of Donna Davis, said, "Hey, can you kind of assemble a bunch of your friends because we're going to have two Oculuses there and on site in D.C. and we're going to pop it on to newbies and then they come in." And then you can greet them and they can kind of see what's possible. And it was absolutely fascinating to me because we were 10 people here in Sansar, and then you can see somebody pops on the Oculus, the avatar comes alive, and you hear their voice, and you hear all these other people in the physical room, and the person who puts the Oculus on, you hear they all said variations of the same thing. They said, "Oh my God, what is this? Where am I? Who are these people?" And there was a sense of panic, right? And it took me some time to understand because I assumed, by now we should know what happens when we pop an Oculus on. We should know that we enter a space. There may be other people. I mean, these noobs over there in Congress, they've been told that they will enter a space where there are other people. But there was such a sense of panic in most of these people's voices, and then we were all like, "Hey, we don't mean no harm. We come in peace, basically." And they go, "Oh," and everybody was like, "Oh, this is so weird." So Charlie, is that one of the things why, for example, let's say Sansar High Fidelity, all these other platforms are maybe not exploding in use? Is there still such I don't know what it is, fear or not, maybe not grasping the
Well,
fact that the avatar is also a representation of a real person vis-a-vis an agent, for example? Because I think through games and all, people have been conditioned maybe that when you see another person that's a computer generated agent, NPC or what have you, rather than actually a real person that can talk to you. I don't know what it is.
I think that the first thing is, people don't like to wear things on their head.
That's right. It
Uh,
is certainly
women
uncomfortable.
women in particular don't like it because of hair. Some people have trouble, although I don't, wearing the Rift, which I'm wearing right now. I don't have trouble with eyewear in the Rift, but people feel uncomfortable without their glasses on.
Hmm.
And at first it's disoriented. You can get dizzy. I got used to get dizzy in VR. I don't anymore. But I'm used to it, and I also know the tricks to fight off that nauseous, asynchronous feeling you get from moving around and not moving around. Um,
People are
which
saying you keep talk. You keep people saying the reason why I feel nauseous is you keep walking into the table.
Yeah. I'm not walking into the table. I'm touching it because it feels like a place I can rest my hands.
Yes.
I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
I get excited when I'm in a new place like this.
But
But
but you
I
but you
think a
were
lot of
just
people,
right. You were just getting there. So there's a thing that they're uncomfortable. But what do you think is it then when they agree? Okay, I'm gonna pop this thing on. It's a little weird. There was some three.
I think they
What do
expect
they
to be
expect?
inside of a movie. They expect to
Right.
be inside of a movie. That is, the value proposition
Like
of
a
VR.
passive experience, basically, if you will. I mean, I'm not saying this in
I
a
mean, I
judgmental way,
think
but
that they want to be like they're, in the Star Wars world, in
hmm
the cantina, dressed like a Jedi,
hmm
and somebody is telling them where to go and what to do.
oh God, when you say that, I can totally see that that's probably probably the case, and that depresses me to no end. You know why? Because
I know.
that shows me that we're so conditioned to accept sort of these things that are being fed to us, while when there is something actually unique and fresh, and I don't know, let's call it user created, and
But
people are
let me
sort of
posit
panicking.
this. Let me
Hmm.
posit this, that the people listening to this show
Hmm.
and you and I, we're different than those people.
Yeah, I guess so, in
You
a
know, this
good
is
way.
a in a good way, of course. And this is a self-selected group of people who understand this world like Second Life as
Hmm.
a kind of social network.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what Sansar has created really is a place for us to have that network.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly.
And I don't think that most people are sophisticated enough to think about that. And if you made them think about that, would think that they want it, although they do want it, and eventually it'll be common.
Hmm.
But they have to get there. And the way they're going to get there is through stupid passive entertainment.
Right. Right.
And,
So basically, if
you know,
there is the cantina, then they're in there, and then after a while they go like, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe I could make my version of that cantina, and I could invite my friends, and we can role play and that stuff, and then it becomes slowly sort of
exactly.
onboarding from a sort of a passive consumption of a big property into your own thing, just like a child watches Spider-Man and then starts to paint a web on their
I
face."
think so.
Hmm.
I think so. Again, this is just all theory. I mean, why
Hmm.
hasn't it
Hmm. Makes
happened?
sense, yeah.
Because there's this huge ecosystem. The technology is quite wonderful. Now
Yeah.
there's a $200 Oculus Go that'll take you right into Sansar.
Yep.
You just pop it on your head. So, but they're saying they're going to
And
sell
the
1.5 million.
tracking. Oh.
Yeah, they're going to. They said they're going to sell 1.5 million Oculus Goes. And that would be wonderful. But let me just say they sold 6 million Gear VRs the first year,
Hmm.
and no one used them.
That's right. And the New York Times gave away I don't know how many million cardboards, and I don't know where they're
Right.
sitting. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not convinced. The other thing is when we talk about consumer products, 1 million of something is not a big number.
Hmm.
Okay, I mean, there 12 million Nintendo Switch devices were sold in December of 2017.
Hmm. Hmm.
12 million.
Hmm.
And it was considered a modest success in that world.
Yeah, and millions of people are playing Fortnite, which is a freaking desktop game. Doesn't even have a VR version.
Well,
Donny Davia is Daviu. Sorry, I mispronounced her name. On YouTube, is just reminding us that Sansar does not work with Oculus Go. So
it
it's
does not.
yeah, it's just
It only works with Facebook Spaces. I thought it worked with
yeah,
Sansar too. My
no, I mean
mistake.
sensor is still too much, but I think that's also a matter of time because about what you're hinting at. Let me just jump in here because this is important. The Oculus Go is the next step where the industry is I also think a little bit deluding themselves in the sense that oh now we eliminated the cables and made it a little bit more ergonomical. Now it's going to fly off the shelves as
Right,
an
but
input device.
the gear didn't have the Daydream doesn't have cables either.
Right, exactly. Hmm.
So I don't think it was so much the cables. I mean, it's this idea that you could just pop it on your head and be in VR.
Hmm.
There's no PC, there's no lighthouses, there's none of the extra stuff that we are constantly wrangling in order to do this.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Right, like I was a little late showing up here because all of a sudden I had a firmware issue and it wouldn't let me log on until I dealt with it.
I thought you just tripped over a bunch of cables and then wrapped yourself into these cables and
No,
then in a fit of rage
no,
threw it
no.
out the window.
This was just the usual Vive lighthouse torture.
Well, I mean, Microsoft updates itself during the weather announcement on network TV. I mean, come on, give them a break. They're noobs in that business.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we're all thinking, well, eliminate all that, and suddenly you'll have, another 10, 20, 30 million people using VR.
Yeah.
And that would be great if it turns out to be true, but early indications are that it is not true.
Hmm.
I mean, one thing I would say, and I hate to say this because I really, really like the Vive Focus, and I'm really excited that it's being released in the US. It is far superior
Hmm.
to the Oculus Go. It's priced
How
accordingly,
much
but
is
it
it
is
gonna?
not
Do you know how much it's gonna be?
600,
Hmm. Oh,
600.
that's
And it is
substantial.
not flying off the shelves in China.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
is they are having a problem in China. They are selling far fewer than they want. I think the Chinese equivalent of Amazon has sold a little less than 20,000 of them.
Wow. Wow.
So that is not good news. But I mean, $600 in China is a freaking fortune,
Hmm.
right? That's where people make $25,000 a year. Is an upper middle class salary there. So
Oops.
it's a lavish luxury item, and it may be that its most likely buyers are people who already have VR in some form, and don't want to spend the money.
Right. I mean, the interesting thing is, I mean, again, we're dancing also around the whole content thing, which is another thing where people say, well, if the content were there, then I would buy that thing. I mean, arguably, there is actually a lot of content, and just in Sansar alone, again, we're talking user created stuff. It's about 1,000
Right.
worlds already straight out of beta,
But
and some of the
I
stuff is
mean, it can't
rudimentary, but
be.
mhm,
It can't be. Everybody in VR is using the paradigm of the game industry,
mhm,
right? Where you're making an app or a game and you pay for it and you download it. If that is the paradigm for VR, it is over.
mhm,
It cannot be a bunch of apps that we pay for and download,
mhm,
right? The typical console user buys 3 games a year. That's $180 worth of games. And they get out of those games, each one, between 60 and 240 hours of gameplay.
right,
Now, there isn't a VR game out there, even the really great ones like Lone Echo, that have more than 6 hours of gameplay in it.
mhm,
So that's $5 an hour of gameplay. Now, nobody is going to, buy 2 or 3 VR titles a month. This is why I think, by the way, Viveport is so great, because it's $6 a month for essentially renting 5 titles. That's
yeah,
a
exactly. That's
much
like a
better model.
that's a
But
blockbuster in the virtual world.
exactly, it's a virtual blockbuster. But my point is that we have to get away from, in terms of content, Sansar is the right idea, right? I mean, I just walked in here, I didn't pay a toll, I
Exactly.
didn't have to
And you know
do
what?
anything. I just booted up Sansar, and here I am.
And you know what? I mean, let me talk straight to the camera. This is the Sansar QVC channel. No, it's not. But let me just make that case because we're here in
And we're
depth.
selling a telephone.
Telephone for 3 payments of 6.99. No, no, but what I really think is very smart, and this is just the beginning. There is, just like in Second Life, is a currency is built into Sansar, the Sansar dollar. And what I see very soon happening, my friend Alfie from Germany is putting together concerts here, and this is stuff that works, for example, in Second Life for independent musicians. Okay, there's musicians in Second Life. Some play one show a day, some play 3 shows a day, and they make money in tips. And some of them that I interviewed make more money than an independent musician who has to, haul their amp down to the club.
Yeah, I've talked to
You know,
those people as well. So
yeah,
and let's not forget our friend Strawberry
yep,
is a fashion designer.
yep, yep.
So there are people, and I think you make another good
The
point,
but
Drax.
let me. I want to say one more thing real quick because
Sure.
Strawberry's going to object. She's not a fashion designer, but she is the most famous fashion blogger. I think she's also a designer because the way she arranges things is creating an aesthetic that other people copy. So she is leading in that regard. But let me say about the musicians one more time. One more thing I wanted to add. If Sansar or worlds like this become actually an economic engine for user to user transactions, just like Second Life was and still is in its stable niche, then we have something that could work. Uh, you know, however small or nichey that is, but it will connect people who create virtual goods and services to others who buy it. If you want to call it virtual eBay or virtual Etsy or whatever, but that is what I actually see as the use case for creative people who want to create their own small business. Now, this is a whole different story that wages are down, and we can go into all this kind of stuff, like how do you actually make a living? But theoretically, with a virtual currency, it's possible. Anyway, sorry, I stepped on you. Go ahead. Where were we?
No, I think that I think that is, of course, the killer app of every medium is other people.
Yeah.
And I think that it is the creativity of those people that certainly will create the excitement and the things to do inside of the virtual
But I
world.
also mean a little bit of the paradigm shift. We're talking a lot about, and you're absolutely right about the consumer behavior with buying and consuming games and spending that kind of money, and that's important to know from a developer standpoint or a company standpoint. What I find fascinating is that, well, hopefully this could sort of reinvigorate the prosumer model. Remember that term? I don't know why that term is
Uh-huh.
dead. I like the term prosumer. I mean, in an
I think
ideal
it's
world,
still
we're
out
all,
there. It's
yeah,
still out there in consumer electronics. I mean, the HTC Vive Pro is considered a prosumer
yeah,
VR device, for
yeah.
example.
Let me read a few before this scrolls over. Here is Jim Reichert. Hi, Jim. How are you doing? He says, great looking space. Well, of course it's great looking. It's MySpace. Well, MySpace, is MySpace still around? The
In
avatars,
some form.
just like Active World. Peter is saying, Theanine, worth noting that VR is more popular in China thanks to arcades and public
Yes.
spaces that let people
Yes.
try VR. They've gone
That's
with a
right.
public-oriented approach in China where instead of having to buy a headset, you just pay a very tiny fee to use one for half an hour in an arcade. And here Charlie goes away. I'm going to follow him so he doesn't
Well, I'm just looking around. Since you started walking around, I thought we were going to walk and talk now.
Yeah, look at this here. A Nightmare on Prim Street. I'm so proud of this poster. This
I
is a
love it.
this is a Second Life Prim. If newbie doesn't res screaming, he won't res at all. Yeah, that's the creativity that Second Life fosters.
Yeah.
um, let's see one more comment here for Worthy. For me, the Oculus Rift is unusable because it's a privacy policy. That is a very good point, and Facebook has been also criticized. I've seen this coming up a little bit now that with eye tracking and everything, people are actually uh, afraid that with all this stuff that's coming up with Cambridge Analytica and the surveillance capitalism, I see that as a potential backlash. I don't know how big it's going to be, but that is an interesting point that the devices we also in much deeper way were being surveilled, with as technology goes forward. Are you concerned about that?
Well, I'm concerned about the unintended consequences of technology in general.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, I am more concerned about Facebook than anything, like all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing about Facebook, right? It's a little bit like the story of Frankenstein's monster.
That's
Right,
right. That's a good one.
we
Yeah, yeah.
invented this thing, and we thought this thing was going to be awesome, right? It's going to connect us with people that we love
Well, we didn't.
and
A guy,
topics
a
that
guy who
we're
wanted to pick up girls did. Okay, let's be real. I'm sorry, I had to throw that one
No,
in.
no, no. I
No?
mean, it's, look, it's your family, it's your friends. You keep up with people in a way. It's the world's best address book. Yet
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, its ability to target, its ability to personalize has actually made us less free.
Yep, yep,
Right.
exactly.
And none of us considered when we started with Facebook that it had the potential to destroy democracy with disinformation and that it would put us all in silos and essentially tribalize our country
Yep,
or
absolutely.
countries in general. So, that is, those unintended consequences. I mean, self-driving cars.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if we instituted self-driving cars and trucks in 20 years as is envisioned, we're going to vaporize 10 million jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there will be no replacements for those jobs. And the money that is saved from these new self-driving cars will flow to financial interests on the East Coast and technology interests on the West Coast, and of course the owners of the transportation companies. But the workers, so they have privatized the profit.
Mm-hmm.
And privatized the benefits. Yet the workers become the responsibility of society.
Right. I'm
So
okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm just so glad that we actually touch on that too, because that's to me also the one of the biggest concerns. And when I said earlier that people make a living and there is an opportunity, the entire question of wages and who actually benefits from playing on this playground and monetizing it is absolutely not solved. I'm really glad that you bring this up too. That's where the whole thing is. Yeah, I think the biggest problem is who benefits from the technology ultimately.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's not obvious, like with Facebook.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think it's one thing, but it really is another.
Facebook also convinced, we talk about this often, Facebook also convinced people that being sort of having your real name up out there is leading in a straight line to more authenticity and more honesty, and it did exactly the opposite. And
Yeah,
Second Life, that was ridiculed for years as, oh my God, look at these people hiding behind weird furries, and nobody knows who anybody is. Arguably, I would say, has more authentic communication because of that sort of onion that you can peel back yourself, and VR has that too. I mean, but theoretically, because I don't have to be all up front and I can just sort of do it on my own pace, I guess.
right.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, I don't wanna miss some of these comments here. What is
Yeah.
Pete saying? I disagree. You don't need to buy a PC to make the iPhone work. I don't know what that is in response to. Ah, yeah.
Well,
Except, go
again,
ahead.
I mean, he's probably referring to, what I said was we thought that what was holding VR back was the fact that it wasn't plug and play, that it was wired, that you had to deal with a PC, and that, things like the Go and the Focus would accelerate growth because we eliminated those problems.
Right.
So, I mean,
Oh, Pete
th-
is also he's pointing out that it's just a ridiculous proposition how much you have to buy right now. A
yes,
newer machine, a big
it's
headset,
absurd.
just to go
Yes.
go into something where you
Right.
don't
What
even
it
know what is the
guarantees
value.
is
Mm,
it guarantees that only, nerds with some disposable income are going to do it.
yeah, exactly.
That's my people.
High five, high five in VR or high 10. We could even do that. Check this out. Uh, so okay, so this is awesome. This is probably the best show I've. No, I shouldn't say that because then past guests will get very sad if I say this is the best show that we had for a long time. Um,
Well,
oh,
thank you for having me. This
uh,
is really fun.
it's it's
I want
it's
to play with
awesome.
all your toys.
This is actually a board game that is totally playable. I mean, it's just an experiment, but we'll have more board games. We're gonna have stacking games, and we're gonna have game night here in Harvest, and so this is a duplicate of the basement. So if we go outside, we can't actually go outside, but uh, it made sense for me to have this locked set, in case griefers walk in, which is another potential issue, griefing harassment. Right now on the real harvest, there's actually people watching us in this basement. Uh, Avatars are sitting in the non-duplicate, in the original, basically, but they watch the YouTube stream. But now let me ask you, we have 20 minutes left. I want to go now to AR. We started off with AR, and your book is very cool. It has all sorts of AR little goodies where you pointed out earlier, the phone is your interface. You put the phone there. There is little figurines popping out. There's a cartoon version of yourself, and we've seen that you made the case earlier, of course, that VR is very has a real practical application. And I was at the Augmented World Expo. When was that? A couple of years ago. It's happening. I think. When is it happening? Next week or
It's
something?
happening on
Oh,
May
and
29th.
right.
Or
Okay, a
May
couple weeks.
29th is the first, or May 30th is the first day.
And you see at these conferences really super good use cases. There's a guy with glasses, and he's on a construction site or a nuclear power plant, and he has people who are sitting in the HQ, and they're giving him directions because they can feed him the data just like with Iron Man kind of. So, but why? When I was there, I was also wondering, and I don't know, I don't have the information if that is actually used widely, but it also seems that it's slower. as anticipated by the industry. And you're saying that this stuff is going to be starting next year to be like mainstream, or maybe I misread
Well,
your
it's
claim.
available now. I mean, many consumers are using it without knowing that they're using it.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, Facebook, filters and, Snapchat, uh, uh, filters are all different forms of augmented reality.
But I meant
So,
also in business now, or in just sort of
well, let's talk about that for a
working, right?
second.
Let's. Hmm.
Let's talk about that for a second, because there are many modes of augmented reality.
Hmm.
Okay, the form that most people are familiar with is the form that has been popularized by Magic Leap, which is the
Hmm.
wearable, contextually aware combination of images in our field of view. But that's actually really the science fiction kind. That's not really happening right now. And when people talk about AR in business, they're really talking about monocular displays, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Which is just a little TV set. It's a micro display that
Hmm.
hangs out about 1 inch in front of your eye. And it's fantastic for manufacturing, handwork, and warehousing.
Hmm.
So if you're doing a wiring bundle right now for a jet, let's say, you are constantly turning back from a personal computer to the handwork, personal computer to the handwork. It's brutal and repetitive and inefficient, and it uses up way too many steps. You're messing with the PC. Whereas if you have the same directions and plans sitting out here on a
Right.
little tiny computer screen, your hands are free and you don't need to look away from the handwork to the instructions or the diagrams.
Right. And that's
So
what I
that's one
saw at these
example.
conferences exactly. So you have your heads up display with all the relevant information about what you need to know, and then you can work and you don't have to constantly look elsewhere. So that's that, and then somebody, remotely can feed you more information. But is that stuff actually used? That's so interesting because when I saw
It's
that at the
it's really
conference,
used.
yeah.
It's really used. It's really used. Manufacturing, they save $10 million wiring a single jet using augmented reality.
Wow.
So it's being used all over the place in enterprise. And so when you hear about companies like Copen and RealWear and Toshiba getting into it, they're all doing monocular micro displays as a methodology for mobile computing.
Damn, this is so outside of the area of my expertise. Because I live in
So,
this freaking fantasy world, Charlie, get
right,
me out of here. I want
right.
I want to work on a nuclear plant with a what is that thing?
Monocular display,
Monocular
monocular
display.
micro display,
Yes.
monocular micro display. And a lot of them, you can move them out of the way when you're not working. You just flip
Right.
it up.
Right.
And Copen is coming out with one. Actually, it's being released, I think, this week or next week, called the Solos, and they're for performance cycling, and they don't look ugly. They look like Oakley wraparounds
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
just this little thing hanging out in front of your right eye, and it Bluetooths to your phone. So anything you have on your phone, you can now see in a monocular display. So, for example, you might be able to watch a baseball game on TV while you're watching it live.
Hmm.
So you see the replays and the stats and everything else, and you hear the announcer while you're watching the game live in a stadium. So we'll see. I mean, it's intended for people who are riding bikes and competing. They see Strava and their heart rate, and they can talk to the coaches and other riders. So
So
we'll
this.
see if that catches on. There was a version of that called Recon,
Hmm.
the Recon Jet, which came out last year from a company that was purchased and owned by Intel, which just shut them down for reasons that aren't entirely clear. Although a number of people have speculated different reasons, but never a good sign when somebody like Intel decides they don't want to play anymore.
Hmm.
So it may be those kinds of micro displays ultimately are not for consumers at all.
But
Um,
okay, so it's pretty clear that something that is light, it integrates into our daily lives as we started this conversation, is going to be more or has the potential to be much more widespread use than something that kind of shuts you off and occludes you from from the physical realm. So where you make a decision to kind of commit to something and completely shut everything else down. The AR as a concept, as an overlay over the busy world, is kind of tied in with how I guess we have bought into our lives as this sort of constantly sort of churning and being economic engines, for better or for worse. I personally think it's for the worse. Uh, I mean, it depends for who you do it. We covered that. But now, where do you see this going in a year or two? This I have a two-pronged question. Now, in a year or two, do you s- envision people having these glasses in the consumer space to doing things like watching a baseball game or having a
No,
call come in and a little overlay of their
no,
child, maybe, hey,
no.
look, here's your daughter.
No, I think it's going to take much, much longer than that. There are a few things that have to be solved, right? First of all, it has to be like wearing a pair of prescription lenses.
Hmm.
In fact, 50% of the people in the world wear prescription lenses. So if you don't incorporate prescription lenses into it, it's never going to work. And right now, only Vuzix does that. Second
Vuzix,
of
they've
all,
been around for a long time. Hmm.
yeah, they are one of the pioneers of again enterprise AR, like ODG. They use a binocular display, so it looks more like a pair of glasses. But they're lunky and stupid looking. I mean, the
Hmm.
ODG glasses look like the things that grandpas wear when they shuffle around in Florida. They these are not these are not things you and I would wear. And so, well, you've got those steampunk things
Yeah,
on, so
yeah. I was just
it
gonna
could
say.
could look like that. It could look like
Mm.
that, but it's got to be fashionable. I mean, that's the one thing that Snap got right was making those specs fashionable.
Hmm.
And Google got that terribly wrong, right?
Hmm.
That's why everybody who wore them looked like glass holes. Also, they were way premature. I mean, people didn't understand what they were wearing. They looked like cyclopses.
Hmm.
Um, but it's got to be fashionable. It's got to be lightweight. It's got to accommodate your existing prescription. It can't have battery life issues. It's got to have an onboard computer. I suppose it could Bluetooth to a phone, but I mean, there's so many issues around it that I mean, honestly, it's going to be years. I can't even
Yeah.
estimate. I mean, I think anybody who tells you that people are going to be wearing some kind of Apple mixed reality headset in 5 years is I want someone with their smoking.
And by that time, will social VR, as it's sort of marketed right now, like Sansar, High Fidelity, Altspace is back, and some smaller startups, will that still be a thing, or will it just be, again, I mean, arguably like Second Life, a sustainable and successful niche, albeit not really catching on outside of that.
Well, it's a little bit different than Second Life because when there are tens of millions of people in VR, they're going to be looking for things to do, in particular, things that don't cost money.
Hmm.
Because people feel like they've already paid money.
Yeah, they already paid $600 for premium
Right.
ski
So
goggles
so so people are going to be looking for
for a
things to
helmet.
do. And of course this is why this is the beauty of Rec Room,
Hmm.
right? It's a social discovery platform like Sansar and Second Life, but they give people to do things to do together. And
Right.
I think that's really important in VR. You have to know who you are and what you're supposed to do there.
But you could also be intrinsically motivated, like me or you or others, and we could just completely reform the entire system to create children, to make them intrinsically motivated and not just sort of recipients and waiting around for somebody to tell them what to do. I know. Here
Yeah.
here I come with
Yeah.
my idealism at the end
Yeah.
at the end of the hour.
That
Uh,
would be pretty great.
what do you think what do you think, this is my last question, and then a couple of comments from the crowd here again. I'm going to should repeat this at the end. We're linking this to the blog as well, Charlie's book, the metaverse guide, the AR enabled guide to the metaverse. Um,
Right.
AR and VR enabled, you don't get any
There's no VR,
there's no
unfortunately.
Oculus that comes with the book. Yeah, that really sucks.
No.
I don't know. I thought it was a good deal. um, Now, Sansar has just started as we go to air on Monday with the podcast. Sansar will have a campaign out where they target esports people who watch esports. And I find that fascinating. And I heard a prominent VR developer say this is the stupidest idea on the planet. Why would people who are perfectly fine watching a game on Twitch go into a virtual world, put a helmet on, sign up an avatar just to sit there and watch the game with other avatars? A prominent Linden, who I'm also not going to name, said, "Well, there are people who drive hundreds of miles to go to like a viewing party, and what we create with this is a room, and they can actually do that in the sense of presence, the sense of being there,
Right.
that
Right.
VR enables will be successful. And that's where they go like, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to drive 100 miles just to watch somebody play
Right.
Overwatch. I can go into this thing. So, what's your take on this as a strategy?
Boy,
Uh,
I
for,
got to tell you, when I read about it, I had the same reaction. But I will say there is a very high correlation of people who are using VR and people who are using Twitch and
hmm
people who are interested in esports.
hmm
So at a moment in time like this, uh, it could work.
hmm
But, what does that mean? Does that mean a dozen people in a room? Does that mean 200 people in a room?
Right.
So I think we just have to see what people do. I think it may be a bit early, but the correlation of the groups and how they overlap is very strong. So
hmm
you can make either argument. Of course, the great thing is we're about to find out. I was much more, I was much more excited about Hover Derby
Yes, and so am
because,
I, because you know why?
yeah,
Because it's user created. Again, this
yeah,
is again something where you know what? Here is the basically a toolkit. Here's a blank 3D space. Do something with it, like giving a child an entire sandbox and build a sandcastle. And some children will, and some others sit there and go like, I don't know what to do. And yeah, sorry, I had to jump in there because I'm excited that
no,
Sansar
I think,
enables that from a
yeah.
user created standpoint. Yeah.
And I think that Sansar should take those clues from Rec Room and start to
hmm
create more and more ways for people to do things.
hmm
Because if you show up by yourself at Sansar, you kind of wander around unless there's an event.
But now we're talking. See, but now this is very interesting too, because and I know, I mean, I guess that Linden Lab is hesitant to do this because I remember in Second Life there was always sort of an accusation that Linden Lab gets into competition with its own users, right? Because it's a user-created platform, and then some people started
Well,
stuff, and then Linden
I
Lab wanted
agree
to.
with that.
hmm
I agree with that, but not at the very beginning.
hmm hmm
I mean, I think at the very beginning, you have to kind of start, you need to kick the ball down the hill.
hmm
Yes, I don't think Linden Lab should be competing with its users, but I also think Linden Lab needs to uh, onboard people in a social and active way that speaks to the medium. And in this case, in VR, you have to know who you are and what you're going to do there.
That's right.
And
LinLab could
so,
also create some of the top people that come into the platform and that they can sort of observe like, hey, oh, here is somebody. Let me hire that guy, make something
right,
custom made for us,
right. Although Sansar could
or
also make it
in-house.
and then turn it over to the users.
That's right. That's right.
They don't have to run it, I mean, because these are all things that where the operation of them is really where the art is, not in the making of them anyway.
Very good point. Hey, Charlie. Okay, we're 3 minutes at the to the top of the hour. I get some messages. Here's a bunch of people in the real Harvest basement. They're asking they would like to meet you. I know Charlie is super busy, but maybe we can pop over there for just a few minutes. We don't have autographs to sign. We don't have books to give away, but the book is the Metaverse, the AR enabled guide to the AR and VR metaverse. Did I get that title correct? Yeah.
It's called
Charlie
Charlie Fink's
Fink's metaverse.
Metaverse, an AR-enabled guide to VR and AR. It's on Amazon, and it will be in Barnes & Noble shortly.
Yes, and I will come to New York just to have it signed.
Okay, that sounds like a
And
great
then I'll
plan.
fly. I'll fly back because I can. I'm a nerd with disposable income. Okay.
Well, I'll buy you a New York steak dinner when you're here.
Oh man, that's awesome. So if you have a few minutes, let's hop over to Harvest real quick. And I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'm having a little problem with my controllers here, so I need to pop out and then pop back in. So I will head over to 114 Harvest Basement and hopefully be there.
Oops, I didn't let Charlie finish. That's rude. Okay, guys. Donnie, that's thank you so much for suggesting that. And I don't. Oops, what's happening? I'm just trying to get into desktop here. Here we go. Am I stuck? Ah, here I am. I didn't want to put Charlie on the spot because I was glad that we had an hour, and so I gotta honor that. Ah, here we go. Here we go. So let me get in there.
I used to live in Seattle.
Oh yeah?
I hear a familiar voice.
8 to 2000.
I hear a voice that reminds me of someone whose mother created Dutch meatballs or something.
Yeah, I used to work at Microsoft.
I've worked with Microsoft.
Hello!
Like everybody
Surprise!
here is Microsoft.
Ebbe, you look very different.
Surprise!
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I did something else. I texted you in chat, but you weren't paying
I didn't
attention.
see it. In the Sansar chat?
Sansar chat.
God damn it.
Anyway, I was just suggesting you give me the private link so I could see Charlie for a minute. But
Charlie is coming. He's coming.
Yeah, all right.
Ebbe, you look very different. Oh, now we get the super crazy double thing.
Oh, now we're going to hear what we said 2 minutes ago.
We have to mute the experience. Ah, man, I should have looked at the chat. I was looking at the YouTube chat. This is so cool, Ebbe, that we have the floating chat here. That is so major. That's going to be huge tomorrow.
It's a first step.
Yeah.
Why huge tomorrow? What's tomorrow?
Well, Atlas hopping, and that's going to be the proof in the pudding because
it's Friday today. I'm going to miss tomorrow.
Ah!
Yeah, I have to fly to Seattle tonight and then drive down to San Francisco tomorrow.
Oh wow, you're driving all the way down?
I'm flying up to pick up my son who has been living up there who wants to move back down here. So I'm going to fly up, go to bed, wake up, and then drive down.
Oh my God. Well, good luck with that. Is it the other son that I don't know, or is it the son that I know? The other one.
Yeah, it's the other one. It's the younger one.
Always the younger ones.
Alex is busy giving you all more interactivity.
That is fantastic. And let me just. Oh, who is here? Leper, Nebulae, Donnie, Mondi. Welcome. I don't know you, Mondi. Now I do know you. Let me check if Charlie is coming. I didn't want to put him on the spot because, oops. Always the younger one. Ah, crap.
That repeat.
No, the repeat. I didn't want to put.
Wait a minute.
Let's go outside here. Let's get out of this goddamn basement.
You can add a script now, so you can change the channel, so you can flip it to some evergreen channel.
I gotta do. You can do that in real time without rebuilding it.
Yes.
I just put a free script in the store for that.
Nebulae, that's awesome. I'm gonna rebuild this right now when we're done.
What'd you do at Microsoft?
I worked a lot on the SharePoint team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Black.
That's
not Charlie.
Like what kind of role?
A lot of development, custom development. We had a company that did the hosted SharePoint, the first SharePoint as a service.
So you're an engineer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I worked there. I grew up as like a program manager, mostly in Office. Well, before Office was even an Office. Hey, Gindipple.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Drax.
God, Abby,
Yes.
what did you do to your outfit?
I'm gonna put a.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I was just playing.
I disapprove of
I'm
this.
gonna need
Disapprove?
Charlie. He's coming. He's coming. Nebulae. Sorry, you were saying Nebulae?
I put a link to that script in nearby chat for you.
Oh, thank you. This is so awesome. This is super awesome.
Wow, rubber banding.
I'm gonna keep streaming a little bit. Charlie just sent me an email that he's coming. I think Ebbe, we need to. Is Ebbe still here? Where is he? I don't see him. Here he is. He came back as the normal Ebbe. Very good. We don't want change here. We want continuity. You know, it's like Ebbe with a new outfit. Yeah, Ebbe with a new outfit is like adding voice to Second Life in 2007. This is like the same, you know.
Is that better again, Nipple? Can you handle it?
Yeah, it's much better.
All right, okay.
You look more like a Target dummy now.
Charlie sent me
I saw that. I realized that first time I saw that was in the press. That's funny.
Charlie just sent me an email. He's coming shortly. But I'm gonna end.
Did your ears shrink? Did they?
Yeah, but I've
just
been
say
eating some
goodbye to them.
carrots.
Okay, so they're growing.
Yeah, they're growing.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Okay, hold on. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. I'm just gonna end the stream real quick. Goodbye, and thanks for watching the stream. Who else? Did I forget anything? Thank you for having us. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Chris, Theanine, I assume you're already in China. Don't be a stranger just because you're in China. And everybody else, thank you. And the edited version is coming out Monday. As usual, I'm going to cut the stream. And then we're gonna be privately in Harvest. If you want to meet Charlie, you gotta come here.
And cut.
No. Little bit music fade out. Come on, let's do this right. Little sappy music here. This music is evoking AR.